Okay guys, confession time. I was not above doing it for the thumbnail, but this is a Georgian style cap, and so I cannot in good conscience continue to wear it for a Victorian themed video. So that's gotta go back to normal hair, cause it's time for the Victober TBR. You all know what Victober is, I don't have to tell you about it, right? Good, let's move on. Okay, so at the end of last year, I thought, you know what I should do for next Victober? I should ignore the prompts and just read as many of the Barsetshire Chronicles as I can get through in 1 month. That seemed like a good idea then. It does not seem like a good idea now. I'm just sort of ineffably not feeling it, and I am of the opinion that if you are going to do something you don't want to do, there needs to be a good reason for it, and I cannot come up with a good reason. So I just went through my Goodreads TBR list and picked out all of the Victorian books that looked good to me, and I will try to read as many as I can in Victober. So I'm still ignoring the challenges, but I'm also not creating my own challenge. I'm just doing whatever I want. I am, of course, coincidentally completing several of the challenges. So let's talk about all of the books I want to read, which is definitely more than the number of books that I will read. So first, I want to start off with 2 books, which I think are related, which I wanted to get to last year, but did not. And that is The Semi-Detached House and The Semi-Attached Couple by Emily Eden. I don't really know what these are about, but my grandmother likes them, so I'm going for it. Then, I want to reread Villette. So I've read Jane Eyre about 1 million times, and I've read Villette once, and a lot of people like to compare them, and I would like to do that. And also, Amanda Senter has a very interesting relationship arc with Villette, which is perhaps even more intriguing than the relationship arcs in Villette itself. And so whenever I watch her, I'm like, I need to reread that book. Then I would like to get around to North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. I read Wives and Daughters last year and was disappointed by it. I still gave it 4 stars. I quite liked it, but I know a lot of people love it. So I was like, oh, I don't get to be one of the people who really loves Wives and Daughters. So I'm gonna try again with North and South, and hope that the addition of like socialism will make me enjoy Elizabeth Gaskell more. Then, The Woodlanders. As you guys already know, I have gotten through all of the novels of Thomas Hardy, which means I am now giving myself permission again to repeatedly reread my favorite Thomas Hardys. And The Woodlanders is definitely in the running for favorite Hardy. And so I want to reread it to cement that. Or, you know, cement that in first place or cement that in second place, whatever that may be. Then I would also like to get to the 2 Bronte novels that I haven't gotten to yet. That's Shirley and The Professor, and I would also like to reread The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. Now, when I read The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, I don't think I'm going to read the whole thing. It seems like a lot of people either really like Helen and don't like Gilbert, or really like Gilbert and don't like Helen, and they are both narrators of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. I'm one of those people who really likes Gilbert, and he narrates the 1st and 3rd sections. So I'm gonna read all of the 1st and 3rd sections, and then for part 2, which is narrated by Helen, my plan is to start each chapter, and then whenever I get bored with the chapter, move to the next chapter. I would not do this if it was not a second read for me. But I feel like the Helen sections are just too long and they start to get really repetitive, and I don't need to read the same sort of scene over and over again, so I will do a quick read of Tenant of Wildfell Hall. Then I wanted to have some spooky things for the end of the month as we move towards October, so I have chosen to reread The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. Now, Henry James is an American. He was born in, I think, New York, but he moved to the United Kingdom in like the 1860s, and most of his books were published from there, so I'm counting him as a Victorian, expat Victorian, in the same way I count myself as a Dutch and expat American Dutch. And then I would also like to read J. Sheridan Le Fanu's collection of short stories In a Glass Darkly, which includes Green Tea, The Familiar, Mr. Justice Harbottle, The Room in the Dragon Volant, and of course Carmilla. I've already read that one, but the other 4 will be new to me. Then there are a couple of George Bernard Shaw's that I need to reread. So I think I have read all of Shaw's plays that were published in the Victorian era. He kept writing well into the 20th century. I may be missing a couple right at the very end. Was Caesar and Cleopatra written in like 1898 or something, maybe. Okay, so I have previously read like multiple Shaw plays in one day as part of various 24-hour readathons, which is great because I get a nice Shaw download, but not so great when it comes to like remembering the plays. They kind of tend to blend together. So there's a couple that I want to reread just so I can keep them straight in my head. Those are Arms and the Man, Candida, and the Philanderer. And I think I'm going to try to not read them all back to back, but I will break up the longer stuff with the shorter plays. And then there are some group reads going on during Victober. 2 Oscar Wilde plays, Woman of No Importance and The Importance of Being Earnest. So I heard that and I was like, you know what would be fun? If I read the complete works of Oscar Wilde during Victober. And then I was like, no, Libby, this is a terrible idea for numerous reasons, one of which is you absolutely hate his fairy stories. Like, guys, the fetishization of suffering is not subtle, and it is weird, and these books are for children. I don't like it. So I was like, okay, let's not do that. Let's instead maybe just read all of his plays, including the French one in French, Pourquoi Pas. So I will be reading, if I make it this far, The Duchess of Padua, Lady Windermere's Fan, The Importance of Being Earnest, An Ideal Husband, A Woman of No Importance, Vera or the Nihilists, A Florentine Tragedy, and La Sainte Courtisane, which were both unfinished plays, and then Salome, which is in French. And then I'm also maybe considering reading Lord Arthur Savile's Crime and Other Stories, which is a collection of short comic mysteries that Oscar Wilde wrote. So yes, that is a lot of books. I am not going to read all of them. Maybe I will. I'm not. I'm still gonna try. So briefly taking a look at the actual challenges, Ange's is read a book by a female Victorian author, bonus if she is new to you. Yeah, Emily Eden, the first one I mentioned, haven't read anything by her before. And then Kate's, not Katie's, is reread a Victorian book. I mentioned several of these will be rereads, and I will definitely make sure to get at least one reread into the books that I actually read during Victober. Katie's is read a Victorian book under 250 pages and or over 500. The plays are definitely going to be under 250. I'm not sure if any of these are over 500. There's probably some edition of the Woodlanders that's over 500. And then Lucy's is read an underrated Victorian book from the same year as your favorite Victorian classic. That sounds hard, and I am not doing it. Thank you very much for watching. Have a very merry Victober. I'll see you during it, I expect.